Welcome to the Fit Rich Life podcast, a show where we talk about money, financial independence, entrepreneurship, health and fitness, and living a life that you absolutely love. I know in my own experience that having a lot of debt can suck the happiness out of one's life. In today's special guest episode, I get to interview Deacon Hayes about paying off $52,000 worth of debt in only 18 months, how he completely paid off his mortgage by 37, then went on to build a successful online business that reached more than six figures a month. And believe it or not, he started his journey as a wood flooring salesman who did pizza delivery on nights and weekends to make extra money to pay down his looming debt. Deacon Hayes is the founder of Well Kept Wallet, a podcast and website all about money and financial independence, as well as the author of the book How to Retire Early. He has been featured on CNN Money, Yahoo Finance, Kiplinger, Bankrate, and more. In this episode, here are some things you will learn about. 1, how you can save an extra $1,000 per month. 2, how to approach paying down debt. 3, how to build an online business. 4, a unique strategy to get in better shape, and a whole lot more. This is a great show for anyone who has dug themselves into debt and is looking for some tools and inspiration to get out of debt and get on the path to financial independence, all while creating a lifestyle that you love. The insight and wisdom Deacon shares will inspire you with your own money and life journey. Please enjoy a wide-ranging conversation with Deacon Hayes of Well Kept Wallet. Deacon Hayes, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me, Justin.
Super excited to dig into your story because you paid off $52K worth of debt in only 18 months. Then you became completely debt-free, including paying off your mortgage by age 37. Then you went on to becoming a millionaire. You've built some online businesses, and I'm just super excited to jump into your story. So to start, take us back to that beginning part of your money journey where you recognized that you were $52,000 in debt.
Yeah, so basically when my wife and I got married, we realized we don't really have a clear financial picture of where we're at. And so we decided we're going to combine our finances, put everything together, figure out where we're at. And we totaled it up, and it was about $52,000 of debt, which included student loans, about $27,000, car loan around $18,000, and the remaining balance was credit card debt. And we just felt like, hey, we're just starting off in life and we're overwhelmed. We got to figure out how to do this differently. And that was kind of the beginning point of, let's research, figure out people that have been successful with money, and then develop a plan to pay it off in a short period of time.
So how exactly did you get it paid off, in just 18 months? Because, $52K of debt, that's like no joke. That's, even if you're making really good money, you still have all your living expenses, but then on top of that, you have to service your debt. So how exactly did you go about getting that 52K paid off?
So one of the things I did is I decided to research who's actually good with money, right? And so I started reading books, actually listening to books because I'm more of an audiobook guy. And so there was a few people that kind of stood out. So there was a guy named Ron Blue, Dave Ramsey, and then Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett was obviously really good with investing, didn't really give me any practical advice on how to, pay off my debt. Ron Blue and Dave Ramsey had very similar principles of just, living on less than you make, investing a significant portion of what's left over. But for paying off our debt specifically, Dave Ramsey's debt snowball is what we decided to do, where you pay off your debt smallest to largest, regardless of the interest rate. And for us, that was super motivating because we had some small debts that we were able to pay off quickly. And by doing that, we were motivated to keep going. And so that was a huge kind of start for us of, hey, having an actual plan with our money to pay it off in that period of time. And that involved taking some sacrifices, right? So I was doing wood flooring sales at the time. And I realized that I had nights and weekends where I could actually make some extra cash. So I decided to do pizza delivery on the nights and weekends. And then I would even go to yard sales and I would do arbitrage. I'd buy like a router for $5 and I'd sell it for $50 the same day online. And so really just figuring out any way I could with the extra time I had, come up with some extra income to pay that debt down even faster.
That's super impressive. And one of the things I always like to mention on the show is that a big part, I would say huge part of the money game, the journey of money is that mindset, right? It's finding those inspirations that keep you motivated along the journey, as well as, doing, trying different things until you start to find the things that really work for you. So, I just have to ask, like, you're doing wood flooring. Like, how did you even, you know, get yourself to the point where you're like, I'm okay doing pizza delivery because like I am so committed to getting this debt crushed?
Yeah, I think my income, even though I was in sales, it was 100% commission and it wasn't consistent. And so as I just knew I needed a way to have some consistent income on top of my sales to be able to pay down the debt faster. And we didn't have any kids at the time, so we had the time freedom. I had the time freedom to do it, and I actually did it in college, and I loved it because I knew that I could listen to whatever music I want while I'm delivering pizzas. I could call my friends on the cell phone and we could have a conversation. So it didn't feel like a lot of work, right? I mean, it was obviously, it involved my time and my car and things like that. But it was something that I could do and I actually enjoyed doing to bring in that little extra income.
I love it. So at some point, I know you started to transition into other types of work. So, you got the debt paid off in about 18 months. Like, walk us through kind of the rest of your career and your money journey. How did that evolve over time?
Yeah, so I was selling wood floors, and during this process, I really developed a love for understanding personal finance. Right, like how do I make extra money, and how do I decrease my expenses, and what are the tricks? Like I had an upside down car that I sold to pay off some of our debt. So I loved kind of these nuances of money, and I realized I would much rather do that than sell wood floors. And so I decided, hey, well, the best place to do that in the marketplace is to become a financial planner. So I decided to look at what the different firms like Schwab and Ron Blue and all these different places. And I ended up working for Ron Blue for about 3 years. And it was a great company, great people to work with, great clientele. But what I realized was most of my time was spent trading stocks or mutual funds and spreadsheets. I wasn't really helping people like on a daily basis. It was part of the job, but it was much less of the job. And so I did that for a few years. And during that time, I created the website Well Kept Wallet, where I just blogged about here's how I sold my upside down car. Here's how we reduced our expenses. Here's how I negotiated with our cable provider to get a better deal. And through that process, I started to get traffic to the website and realized, wow, I could actually reach more people and potentially have a bigger impact through creating an online business. And so eventually I transitioned from working for the financial planning company and working for myself full time about 2013. So I've been doing it for about 11 years now.
Wow. So what was the time frame? Because I think one of the important nuances of kind of people's money and career journey is understanding that this didn't necessarily happen overnight. So, you're spending 3 years being a financial planner with Ron Blue. How long were you working on the online business before you actually were like, wait a minute, like this is a viable business that is making enough money to support myself?
So what I will say is my story isn't necessarily the poster child for, hey, you should do this. But so one of the things that we did is we had a local Fox 10 call and say, hey, we want to do an interview with you and talk about your debt story. So it's like, great. They're like, hey, can we come to your place and film it? I'm like, sure. And so during that time, I had the website, and this is like probably sometime between 2011, 2013. And they said, hey, by the way, can we take a video of your budget sheet on your computer? And I'm like, sure. And so what they did for me, and I had no idea, was they were creating a call to action of like, hey, go to Deacon's site, download his budget form. Well, during that week, I made $3,000 off of ad revenue. And I'm like, I'm a financial planner. After I'm paying taxes and medical insurance and all that stuff, I'm making like $3,000 in a month, even though I was making like 55 grand a year to start. I was like, I made more in a week than I do in a month take home, and so it just opened my eyes to, wow, there is potential here if I can just figure it out. So it was making some money here and there, but I wasn't really working on it hard at that time because I had a full-time job and I still had to drive through rush hour traffic and things like that. So a lot of my time was dedicated to driving to my job, working at my job, driving home from my job. So while I was actually a financial planner, I didn't work on it much. I just had these little wins here and there that kind of gave me inspiration of like, well, if I did quit my job, I probably could figure this out.
And did you, like, when you finally made that transition, when you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to go full bore on Well Kept Wallet, like, had you hit a certain amount in, monthly revenue from the website? Like, what was the impetus to like, okay, I'm going to give this everything and stop, the financial planning job?
So it actually was kind of forced upon me. So I got this opportunity to be on national TV in New York City, and working for the financial planning firm, I had to notify them because we're regulated by the SEC, and I represent them, right? Even if I'm giving financial advice. And so my boss was like, "Why are you going to be on national TV? This is kind of weird." And I'm like, "Well, we're just sharing our story of paying off debt and trying to inspire people." Well, they looked at my site and they said, because they kind of put some eyes on my website and said, well, this kind of is a conflict of interest. And I was kind of confused. I'm like, well, I'm talking about budgeting, paying off debt. I'm not telling people what to invest in, right? Well, anyways, long story short, it was kind of a heart to heart, like, Deacon, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, well, I really want to help the average person with their finances, right? Like, I love what you guys are doing here, and there's a purpose for it, right? They're helping high net worth individuals, grow their wealth and pass it on to future generations. But I was like, that's just not where my heart is long term. So basically, worked out a deal where I kind of could transition, got a severance, and work on my business and try to figure it out. Now, the one thing I will say is we did have a fully funded emergency fund. So that plus my wife working kind of gave us this confidence that, hey, let's say we've got 10 grand in the bank at the time for an emergency fund, and my wife's working and she's making a few grand a month. Like, I have a severance that will help kind of bridge the gap to figure this out. So that's kind of how it all went down.
It's so fascinating how the universe conspires to like push us more into our purpose and our dharma. I can really relate to that a lot. So I love that. Really what you did is you recognize that like you want to help the, younger version of yourself, like, right? You want to help the people who went or who are going through exactly what you went through, being 52K in debt and trying to get your money figured out. You weren't the person, from the beginning that was a super high net worth person that needed, help with their investments. And you really just recognize that you wanted to serve the people that were earlier on the path that you had been down. And I think that's really powerful. And one thing I like to call out for the audience, because I've interviewed, so many different guests, and a lot of people, they want to start like an online business because they want to make a bunch of money. And what you've revealed is your focus was like, you just wanted to share your journey and help people. And you never, like, at least from what you've told me so far, you weren't like, oh, this is going to be the thing that like makes me super wealthy. You were like, I just like, I've had so much fun learning about this. I want to help people. And so you really approached it, with that frame of mind of like helping people, not trying to make a bunch of money. But then the universe was like, hey, I'm going to reward you for like actually, doing the good work of, trying to help other people on their own money journey. And it sounds like you had a couple different opportunities, with the the local uh, news network, like covering you, being on international TV, and then kind of coming to this transition point where work was like, wait a minute, what you're doing isn't on par necessarily, or it's a conflict of interest with us. So I'm just curious, like, you've been through this experience. What do you tell people who are interested in like starting an online business? Like, what is the kind of tips or frame of mind that you feel like people need to think about before they kind of delve into, generating income through various forms of online business?
Yeah, I would say one thing that was really helpful for me was having a genuine interest in the subject, right? Because I didn't make money for years. To some extent, I think there was probably 2 or 3 years where I didn't really make maybe $100 or something. So it was a genuine interest where I'm like, hey, I'm going to write this article in my free time, which I didn't have a lot of at the time, because I'm genuinely interested in it. And then on top of that, research the different models out there. For me, the model was, how do I write written content that will get traffic from search engines that then will help people with their finances, bring them into, kind of our ecosystem, email, all that kind of thing. But then there's, video marketing and having a presence on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. There's e-commerce, right? So it's like figuring out, now you have this genuine interest, what's the best kind of platform for what you want to do, and then execute. The other thing is, I don't recommend that people quit their job right away, right? I typically say, yeah, make sure you have an emergency fund. Make sure that you have some proven income coming in that, like, if I did quit, maybe I'm not replacing my salary, but I could replace my salary within a certain period of time. And so really, like, once you have that genuine interest and you have that kind of model figured out, then it's just a matter of execution.
So speaking of execution, let's talk about those first like 3 to 12 months. Like, you transition out of your work with Ron Blue, and now you're like, okay, now I really need to figure out how to make this, make significantly more money in order to, match what I used to make working at Ron Blue. Like, walk us through kind of that part of the journey.
Yeah. So one thing that was interesting was it wasn't easy to get PR like I thought it would be, right? Where you're like, oh, these people are just naturally reaching out to me, or I would send an email and they respond. Like, there's only so many local news stations, right? I think there's like 5. If you think of like ABC, CBS, AZ Family, like there's not a lot of news stations. So like, once you kind of tap that ecosystem, recreating what I kind of explained earlier became harder. And so what I realized was, okay, I need to kind of figure out more avenues for getting in front of people. But at the same time, I had friends that were business owners, and they said, hey, Deacon, can you help me with my website? We want to drive traffic to it. We want to improve the presence, that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've got extra time now. So I actually started a side hustle, a marketing agency, to bring in revenue, where I think my first client was like $200 a month, right? And I'm like, oh, hey, okay. And then I got another one for 300. I'm like, okay, I'm at 500. Eventually I was making 5 to 10 grand a month, kind of just consulting, helping people grow their online presence, where that helped supplement the income while I was trying to build up Well Kept Wallet.
Oh, that's such an important nuance of the business. So, because I know your backstory, I know you got, to the point where you're making like 6 figures from Well Kept Wallet, but like that didn't happen in the first necessarily year or so. Like, so you actually took the skill that you had built of like actually building a website, and then you essentially farmed that skill out, over, to other local business owners, developed an income around that while you continued to like tinker and test and figure out different ways of bringing more, online income that was not tied necessarily to client work. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I realized is I was still helping kind of regular people. These are guys that own, one owned a boat repair shop, another one owned a sod company, another was like an immigration attorney. Like, there, all these different people are like, I can still help them, not really with their money, but growing their business and helping them in that regard.
Yeah, I love that. So How long did it take you to get to six figures of monthly income with Well Kept Wallet?
So it took about 3 years from when I quit. And like I said, the first year, I was just figuring stuff out. I was trying to do PR, I was trying to write content. I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was trying to figure it out. I was building up that digital marketing company, but not in the sense that I wanted to grow it. It was just more, I needed the revenue, and it was a natural fit for me. Um, so I think about a year or two in, I was making about 100 150 grand in side revenue with the digital marketing company, and that was kind of providing for our expenses and stuff. But I had some real successes in there where we had helped companies really grow their traffic, and I thought, why am I focusing my time and energy on other people's projects and sites? Why don't I shift gears and hire someone to run kind of the digital marketing agency so that I could focus on Well Kept Wallet? So when I did that, 2016 was like an explosive year, because that's when I went full, like, okay, I think I was around 4 grand a month in revenue on the website. And I was like, hey, how could I 10x this? And so that's when we went from like 4 grand a month to like, I think 80 or 90 grand a month by the end of 2016 with the website, by just transitioning from focusing on other people's projects and building up their companies to, hey, how can I now do this for myself?
Yeah, I think that's so. There's a couple things I want to point out for the audience. So you mentioned like don't quit your job, until you start to see that you have a viable business on the side. So, nights and weekends, like build up the side project. And I did a very similar thing in my own journey. Like I started writing online about money and fitness for like literally almost 10 years before I monetized it. Just kind of passively on the side. So, what I like to think of as like digging the well before you're thirsty. You know what I mean? And pursuing, like you said, pursuing genuine interest. Like you were just very interested in money and personal finance. And then you took your skills of, money and personal finance that you were able to hone even more so at Ron Blue. Then, you started sharing some of that in your own research with Well Kept Wallet. Then you went on to help other people build their websites and get more traffic. And then you're like, wait a minute, if I focused, instead of focusing on everyone else, if I actually focused on my own business, I could actually start to generate significant online income from my own website if I put that same focus of growing the traffic. So I'm curious, how are you actually making money? How are you doing 80, 90,000 plus a month? Like where was the money coming from in regards to, how Well Kept Wallet was actually generating income?
So it kind of evolved in phases. So initially, I thought that I would do Facebook arbitrage. So essentially, I would buy traffic from Facebook and then I would convert it on the website on affiliate commissions. So the way that the primary way that we made money was from affiliate products. So let's say someone wanted to sign up for a bank account, a high yield savings account. Well, it's a win-win situation because they're getting 5% in their bank account, we're getting $100 commission for signing up, and the bank gets a new customer, right? So the goal was, hey, I want to send as many people to these pages to convert, and I'm going to buy traffic from Facebook. And at one point, I think we were paying like 15 grand a month for Facebook ads, and then I was converting at like 25 to 30 grand of revenue. So the profit was almost 10 to 15 grand a month by doing that. But then what I found was the cost started going up. I start to tap the audience, and so all of a sudden it's like, okay, now what used to cost me 6 cents per ad is now 8 cents per ad, and my margins kind of got really razor thin. And so I realized, okay, I need to figure out new ways to get traffic. SEO was kind of the main way that I was doing it for these local businesses. So we really tried to figure out how can we get more traffic from Google, the search engines, and write content that would really help people, but then we could monetize through these affiliate relationships. We also had display ads as well. That was a huge source of revenue for us as well. So kind of transitioned from Facebook to SEO, and that's when everything just kind of skyrocketed.
Yeah. And I know, like, in the past, like, Google AdWords used to work so well, and I've talked to multiple people where they used to get so much traffic from that, and then, like, the algorithm changes and the traffic just drops off. So I'm curious, like, um, how are you seeing, like, the evolution of, traffic, and now we have, AI coming in, and I'm just curious, like, how you're thinking about the evolution of your own online business or online business in general in regards to both like traffic and the impact that AI is starting to have.
Well, what I found was for a long period of time, written content was the way that people got information. Like you would search on your phone and you'd ask Google a question and it would give you results. But now it's like Google is serving up Reddit and Quora. They want user generated content. So they want the
Mm,
regular person that's giving their answer to rise above sites like mine. It also favors big sites. So like Forbes, Business Insider, all the different, Investopedia, NerdWallet. So I know that for us, written content is kind of going by the wayside, and
hmm.
video, short form video, TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts, like that's the future, at least in the present time. Now with AI, what's crazy is I don't know if you've seen Sora, but where Sora is OpenAI's version of video AI. So you can literally type in, you know, seagulls flying north of Spain coast, and it will just produce a video in like epic quality of seagulls flying in Spain, right? And so you're like, okay, how is this going to impact video moving forward? I think for us, it's just, hey, we're going to embrace it and we'll use that type of footage for B-roll. But you're still going to have personalities like yourself, like myself, that people don't want to, they're not going to want to learn from a robot. They're going to want to learn from a person that's made mistakes and overcome them and then figure out the game plan that they use to do that. And so AI can just be a good tool to help us in that journey.
Yeah. I hadn't even heard of that with Sauron, or however you say that one. That one, I'll try to include it in the show notes if people are curious. But it's just insane, like what just in my own content creation journey, like how much efficiency, and productivity you get from utilizing AI to help you produce written content, video content, and so much more. So I think one of the things that I really admire about you, Deacon, is you're constantly like analyzing like what is working now, what isn't working anymore, and where you think like the next iteration of the online business is going to go. And you started with Facebook ads, you went to SEO, Google, AdWords. I know you've also like done a lot of work with Pinterest and other things, and now you're exploring more video content with Reels and TikTok and YouTube. So I think you have this pattern where you kind of like go and you do the research, but then not only do you do the research, you then test and implement, and then once you find the thing that is working, you like scale it and you do a lot more of it. So I think that's just really fascinating. Circling back to your kind of online content creation and your money journey, you also wrote a really incredible book called You Can Retire Early, Everything You Need to Achieve Financial Independence. And I'm just curious, when did that come out in your journey? Like, how did it happen? And when did it happen?
Yeah, so it was happening right about the time when Well Kept Wallet was just exploding. And so I got approached by a publisher and I was like, man, this is a great opportunity to kind of share some of my insights. And then, so I want to say about 2017, which I want to say is the first year that we hit seven figures. And that was just insane to even think that was possible, thinking that the site 4 years earlier made nothing. So it was just kind of this culmination of like, hey, how can I teach people that you can retire early and that there's some paths to it, whether it's retirement, stock market, or a business, and what does that look like?
Yeah, awesome. Um, It's crazy. I feel like you really like there's so many financial independence retire early books now, but I feel like you were like honestly like 3 years ahead of everybody else. Like, in the last, couple years, a lot of books around retiring early, by podcasters, bloggers, etc., have come out, but you were so much earlier than everybody else. What do you think and I feel like same thing with your well kept wallet. I think you said, you started around 2013 or even 2010. Like, have you always just been ahead of the curve? Like, how does this happen?
Yeah, I would say accidentally, right? Yeah, so like, yeah, so started in 2010, but didn't really start the business part till like 2013. And then for the book, like I wasn't really a big fire person. Like I knew of Mr. Money Mustache and I've read his, his site. I love the concepts of it, but I wasn't like, I like working. So for me, it wasn't like I want to escape from work and kind of do whatever I want to do. It's like, no, I just want to do work that I enjoy. And so I could probably work until I'm 75, 80, as long as I'm doing something that I enjoy and doesn't require a lot of physical activity. So I'm like, so for me, it was like, I don't want to escape anything, but I do want to create a lifestyle that involves freedom, it involves travel, that involves being able to do stuff with my family that, maybe my parents weren't able to do with me. Like going to international places and having cool experiences. And so for me, it was more of just creating that. That was what was important to me. And having a business that is fulfilling was also important to me.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. Like I love the concept of financial independence, having enough assets where, your assets generate enough money for you to live off of indefinitely. But I just don't see myself retiring early because like after a month or two off, I'd be like, okay, what am I actually doing to, create positive impact in the lives of others? Because I really feel like humans are designed to be productive. And, there's a lot of research that shows like when people retire, like they die not very long after, right?
Yeah, so I actually have a story about that. When my son was born, we had all these lava rocks. I live in Arizona, so we had these lava rocks in the backyard, and they're sharp and kind of rigid. And I was like, I need to get rid of these. So I posted them online for free. I'm like, hey, come pick these up. So this guy comes. He's like 78 years old with a pickup truck. He's got a wheelbarrow. He's got gloves. I'm like, do you want me to help you with this? Like, cause he was just older, and he's like, no, I got this. And like, he's really fit. And I'm like, so what are you doing? He's like, I'm just landscaping my yard, and I'm like, he's like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I just wrote this book, You Can Retire Early. And he goes, I did that once. And I said, really? What happened? He's like, well, I sat on the couch, I ate a bunch of junk food, and then I had a heart attack. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. I said, so what did you do then? Like, how'd you come out of that? He's like, I went back to work. He's like, I just worked less and I did projects I wanted to do. And it was just like realization that like, yeah, retirement is not the solution, right? Like creating a lifestyle that you want, having a meaningful life, like that's what matters, right? And it can involve work or cannot involve work depending on what your priorities are. But so that was kind of in the book. What I wanted to go through is like, hey, no, there's different paths where if you're a business owner, you have a lot of freedom. You could work 10 to 15 hours a week, feel like you're really making an impact, but have more money and more resources and more time to do whatever you want. And so, the stock market allows you to do that. Real estate allows you to do that as well. But for us, business is where I've really focused my time and energy.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I think it's really about building a lifestyle that you absolutely love. And I think a lifestyle that you love is going to include some sort of work that you actually enjoy, right? Work that is deeply meaningful to you in a personal way. And, I think, with the financial independence movement, a lot of people are trying to like escape a work situation that they don't like, right? Like, oh, if I achieve financial independence, then I can, not work this job that I don't like anymore. And, in preparation for this podcast, I was listening to one of your other interviews and you made this comment about, a lot of times people are retiring away from something versus retiring towards something. And I think that's really important. And I feel like you've done an incredible job of building, a life that includes work that is deeply meaningful to you. And so when it came time for you to say, move on from Ron Blue, you're like, I don't feel deep satisfaction helping these high net worth individuals. Like, I want to help people who are, on the same journey that I was on. Um, Going back to your money journey, in the opening of the podcast, we talked about the fact that you became completely debt free, including paying off your mortgage. So I'm just curious, like, walk us through, like, why did you do that? When did you do that? And kind of walk us through that part of your story.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think kind of was a huge why behind it was my parents got divorced and both of them had their houses foreclosed on. So like the house that I kind of grew up in was no longer my parents or my mom's, And so I was like, man, I never want that to happen to my family. And so for me, it was less of a mathematical equation. It was more of a personal, like, hey, I want that safety, that security for my kids, for my wife, that they don't have to worry about that. And so once we had paid off our consumer debt, we really made it kind of a goal like, hey, we had this extra money. I mean, it was like 1,500 to $2,000 a month that we were paying towards student loans, credit cards, car loan. Like, what if we just start funneling that towards our mortgage and pay it off as quickly as possible? And so that was kind of the reasoning behind it was, hey, I want to say 2000. Well, we actually did it twice. So I don't know if you want to go into both details, but we lived in a smaller house and we decided that like, hey, we wanted to do it. And we did it in 5 years. And so it was like, we just took the money we were paying on our previous debt and just funneled it right towards paying down our mortgage.
And then I assume you sold that house, bought a more expensive house, and then you repeated the process.
Exactly. Now, I will say, if we want to be like fully transparent, we also bought a second home. And so it was kind of like I'm not this, I want to say like, I not a perfect poster child for like what to do, but I think the process, like you said, we repeated. So we bought a second home. We're like, hey, we'd always love to have a home in the mountains that we could go to because we live in Arizona and it's really hot here in the summers. So if we could go there in the summer and we could live here in when it's nice. And so we did that for a couple of years, but we had toddlers. And so when you have like babies and 1 and 2 year olds running up and down stairs and you're in another, we were in a different town. Like it was not ideal. It was kind of like we idealized like having a second home would be great. But then we realized, man, this is a lot of maintenance. We had rattlesnakes, we had scorpions, like we had trees that were falling down from lightning. You're like, man, this is a lot more than I was anticipating. So long story short, we sold the second house, got some equity out of that. We took extra money we were paying towards our debt and paid down the new home that was, kind of more of our forever home. And so that process was about 2 years. So we the first house we paid off in 5 years, the second house we paid off in 2 years. But yeah, we had kind of built that discipline, right? Of like, hey, when we have money, this is where it's going to go. And so that's kind of the process there.
So on the subject of real estate, I'm just curious kind of like where you're at in that. Like, do you see, I've mentioned on the show before, I know you've mentioned as well, there's kind of like three main ways to financial independence. There's like, work a W-2 job, put that money into the stock market, invest it. Real estate is another avenue that can be a very powerful way. And then the third way, which you've really focused on, is entrepreneurship or building businesses. And I'm just curious kind of where you are at with real estate in your own life. Is it a part of your, financial independence strategy, or is it something that you've tried and decided it wasn't quite for you? And I'm just kind of curious where you're at.
Yeah, so I would say I've tried it and I've realized it's not for me. At least from owning the property, managing it myself. What I'll say is a couple things that I think are good for people to realize. Like I bought a condo in 2006 and I sold it about 10 years later. I want to say it was 2014, 2015. So not quite 10 years for a loss. And so what a lot of people think is like, buying real estate is this surefire way to become wealthy and real estate always goes up. Like there are periods of time where real estate actually goes down and it takes a while for it to come back. And we've been in this like expansion for a long time now, right? And so I am not a real estate expert, so I'm not forecasting anything like a bubble or anything like that. But all I can say is it's one of those things where I've tried it. I did it for 10 years. I had tenants that had horror stories, and I'm like, this putting in the stock market, investing in index funds, setting it, forgetting it, being consistent is so much more my personality type than the dealing with tenants, fixing up, when a hot water tank, leaks or a roof issue, that kind of stuff. So I know plenty of people that do really well in it. It's just not kind of my lane.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat with you. I think real estate is an incredibly powerful vehicle to, achieve, high levels of, success in money and financial independence. But it really is, from my understanding, at least for the first like 7 to 10 years, like it's a full time, if not more than a full time business of like going through the accumulation phase, before you get to a point where it's like somewhat passive, and getting it to a point where it's really passive not only takes a lot of work, but a lot of time, because you have to accumulate a certain number of properties where then you actually have the kind of resources to have someone else manage it while you still are making enough profit from it. Whereas like index investing, you and I have talked about this offline. It's like, it is the most passive thing that you can ever do. It's like you just put the money in there and you don't even think about it. And it just, on average, goes up by 8 to 10% per year, with dividends reinvested and everything. And it's so incredibly passive. And I think where you and I are also similar is, instead of like, say, going out and getting real estate and trying to grow our wealth that way, we're pursuing our passions and our interests through online business building. And I think that is a much more rewarding, lifestyle and work lifestyle for us. Now, there are some people who love the game of real estate, and I get that. And I want to encourage people that if you feel like that is a fun way for you to go down the journey of financial independence, definitely pursue it, because it can be one of the fastest ways to get there. But also realize, like, if you try it or you don't feel like it's fun or interesting to you, it's not the only way to get to financial independence.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think, and I'm not ruling it out like forever, right? Like I've thought about the idea of like a small apartment complex, right? You're like, if there's a manager and you have a maintenance team and you have the resources, like it could potentially be an opportunity. But yeah, I think with real estate, there's just so much involved when it comes with borrowing money, especially at 7 or 8%, with the pricing the way it is right now. But to your point about the online business that I think is important, I realized that I could write a piece of content and I could make 200 to 500 bucks a month from one article on the website. So the risk involved in writing one article versus buying a $200,000 home that I'm going to make the same amount of money on, and the risk involved in that. So that was why I decided, focus on growing the online business, because I knew that's what I was good at. And that's what I knew how to kind of scale, and focus on that instead.
Yeah, that's actually really powerful framing, because to like, a lot of people are cash flowing only like $200 to $500 a month from a rental property, but the cash outlay to get that property is so high. And then you have like, a anywhere between a 5 and 20+ year debt pay down portion of that real estate endeavor. Whereas if you took the same amount of energy and learned how to create content online and, make money online, the cash outlay is like very, very minimal. And that's one of the beautiful things about online businesses is the margins can be so incredibly high. The startup costs are so incredibly low, and it's just a skill set. Just like real estate is a skill set, building businesses online is a skill set. Helping some of the people who are earlier on their journey. Um, Debt played a big part of my money journey. I had a lot of debt that I had to get out of. I'm just curious, what kind of things would you recommend people, who are just starting out, starting to, look at their debt, take care of their debt, or, start to get on the path to financial independence? What kind of advice or strategies or tools would you give them?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is give yourself ability to dream. I think what happens is we get stuck in kind of our patterns and our routines. We're like, hey, I go to work so I can pay for my car, so I can pay for my house, so I could, like, and you just kind of repeat the cycle over and over again. And you're like, well, no, like, what are some of the dreams that I have? Well, I I didn't get to travel to like international countries until I was like in my 20s, right? And I was like, I'd love to take my kids on a trip to Europe, right? Like, I'd love to completely pay off my house. Like, so once we dream, that kind of unlocks a stronger why. Like, why would I want to pay off my debt in the first place, or just live like everybody else and just kind of make the minimum payments, And so I would say that's the thing I encourage you to do. And if you're married or you have a significant other, to do it with them and say, hey, what are some dreams? What are some goals that you love to accomplish? Because then all of a sudden you start raising the bar, and you're like, oh, well, in order to do that, I got to deliver pizzas at night, or I got to get a different job, or maybe I do geo arbitrage and I sell my house and I go move someplace where the cost of living is cheaper so that I can achieve it a lot faster. So really, I think that's the first step, is like, slow down, give yourself some time, take a day and just dream and say, hey, on a whiteboard with your spouse, like, what are some key things that we'd like to do? And then that can kind of be a strong fire to kind of ignite, to say, hey, this is why we're going to pay off our debt. This is why we're going to do these things that don't seem conventional, so that we can actually make these dreams a reality.
I think that's huge. I think that's actually where most people fail with both money and fitness, is they don't have a big enough why. And in order to create a big why, you have to dream. Like, what do you want to have when it comes to your money or your fitness or a certain aspect of your life? Because, with a big enough why, you can handle pretty much anything that comes along. But if you don't know your why, or your why isn't very strong, as soon as like life and circumstances happen, you're off course, and you don't get back on course. So I also know that you have a $1,000 savings challenge, as another tool that can really power people on their money journey. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so there's been plenty of studies that show that like 60+% of Americans don't have $1,000 in the bank, right? So I thought, wait, what's the easiest way to solve that? It's like, let's create a challenge where people will come up with $1,000 in a short period of time. And so on our website, on wellkeptwallet.com, on the homepage, it's just a free challenge for anybody who wants to sign up and say, hey, I want to learn extra ways to make money in this economy. I want to learn ways to reduce my expenses and come up with $1,000, so that can be a buffer between them and debt.
I love it. And we'll definitely link that in the show notes. Um, I really appreciate you creating like empowering content like that, because I'm sure at the beginning of your debt pay down journey, you're like, where the heck am I going to get extra money to actually take care of this debt? But like, you actually went through that process. And so this challenge is like, really close to your heart, because like you had to go through this own personal challenge in the beginning of your debt pay down journey. So I appreciate you putting that together. Before we transition into your fitness and health journey that you've been going through, are there any other kind of like topics in the realm of, money and financial independence that you feel like we should cover before we make that transition?
One thing I think would be worth touching on is cryptocurrency and NFTs and kind of the world of alternative investments, right? Like, because I think for a lot of people, they're so enticing, because you see people that will post like, oh, I bought Bitcoin for $100 and now it's worth 70 grand or whatever. And you're like, okay. But what you don't see is, well, Bitcoin was 60 grand before, and then it got cut in half to 30 grand, and it took a while for it to crawl back, right? So there's plenty of people that have actually lost money in cryptocurrency. And so I would just say, really, like, be very cautious about the type of advice you're receiving on social media, and look at stuff with a long-term track record. That's why when we talk about real estate, or we talk about, index funds, you can look at like a 50-year, 100-year track record. With cryptocurrency, NFTs, you don't have that. In fact, you've got a lot of volatility, a lot of ups and downs. And so I would just be very cautious. I usually tell people no more than 10% of your net worth should ever be in any alternative asset, because that's too risky. And really, a set it and forget it model is so much more peace of mind. And so I just wanted to touch on that before we transition on.
Yeah, I have to double tap on that because um, fortunately, I have always stood by the rule of no more than 5 to 10% of my money in like, things like crypto and other shiny objects that, will supposedly get you rich quick. I so I put 12K into Bitcoin, and like within 3 months of putting that 12K, it dropped down to like 3 or 4K. And it took literally like 3 or 4 years. And fortunately, it was just like a small portion of my net worth at the time. So like it was fun play money for me. Like I knew I was essentially gambling. And I was able, but because I didn't need the money, I was able to just wait until it recovered. But I'll share another story that I don't actually think I've shared online. So you and I are both like a big fan of Tim Ferriss. I know that just from listening to some of your content and our offline conversations. But back a couple years ago, Tim Ferriss and Kevin Rose talked about this company that they invested in called BlockFi, where you could actually earn like 9 or 10% interest in like just having your crypto with them. And so I was like, oh, this is great. So I put $63,000 of, this was just money that I wanted to, earn interest on. And again, at this time in my life, this was after that initial crypto, that was still way less than even 5% of my net worth. But then, a year and a half after of having that money, that 63K in BlockFi, the company freaking went bankrupt and my money has been stuck there. And I'm just now, like 2 years later, a year and a half later, starting to recover a portion of that $63,000 because I was like, oh, awesome, I can earn 9 or 10% on like having money in like Gemini USD, which is like a cryptocurrency that's pegged to the US dollar. And like I may as well move all my crypto from Coinbase to BlockFi so that I can earn extra interest on it. And I was just like chasing quick money, like easy money, unproven money. And I want to share that story with the audience because like usually if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And the easiest way to like lose a lot of money is to try to get rich quick. And then I know you and I both have gone through, on the same subject, stock picking journeys, where we're like, oh yeah, like, I'm smart enough to pick stocks. And what no one ever tells you, we all have friends who have made a ton of money, like investing in some stock, whether it's, Nvidia or Netflix or whatever. But what they don't tell you is the stocks they picked that went to like almost nothing. So I'll share another stupid financial mistake that I made because I don't think I've talked about it on this podcast. I get bored with index investing. So like that's why I'll take 5 to 10% of my money in stock pick or put it into crypto. But back when Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos were racing to space, I was like, oh yeah, Galactic, Virgin Galactic. Like I want to be a part of that. So I put $5,000 into Virgin Galactic. And then, it proceeded to drop down to the point where it was only worth, I think, a few $100s before I sold it and just like locked in those losses because I wanted to offset some of my own capital gains.
Yeah, I've definitely done the same thing. So there's a couple of things. Two of my early jobs when I was growing up was AMC movie theaters and Blockbuster. Okay, so so we'll start with Blockbuster. Like I loved Blockbuster. Like I couldn't wait until I was old enough to work there because I get free movies and I get to hang out with other people that love movies and that kind of thing. And so when they were going down, right? I was like, man, I feel like they've been around forever. They've got these, they had a deal with like Dish Network where they're doing Blockbuster on demand. They had kiosks kind of like Redbox where they were doing them inside gas stations. I'm like, they're going to come back. And sure enough, they went bankrupt, right?
Yep.
And so, there's that one. And then AMC. before the meme stuff started happening, I was like, I wonder what are some recovery stocks? Like, what are people going to start doing again? Like once COVID's over. And so I was like, movies is a place that they're going to go, and it's going to do great. Well, so I invested a significant amount of money in it. And then I was like, you know what? This is not my personality to like try to pick stocks and pick winners. So I sold it before the meme, like before it exploded, right? So I was like, it's one of those things you can never time the market, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a statistic. I want to say John Bogle from the founder of Vanguard. He did like a study where 92% of fund managers underperform the stock market. So people that are paid for a living to pick the winners underperform the S&P 500 92% of the time. So your chance of doing it as an individual or hiring someone to do it is just so slim.
Yeah. And, I'll say this. So this show is not like professional financial advice. We're just sharing this purely for education and entertainment. But yeah, my recommendation is like, you can stock pick, you can get crypto or NFTs, but just make sure it's like no more than 5 to 10% of your total investment portfolio, or you are just setting yourself up to like put yourself into a really unfortunate financial, predicament. Like I literally remember, just on the same subject, that time when crypto was like at 600,000, or excuse me, $60,000. I had a friend who was like super bullish on crypto, and he had, like 600K in crypto. And I was like, dude, I remember we went on a walk. I was like, you need to take some of that and put it into investment, into index funds so you can diversify. And he's like, no, 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 no. And literally, within a year of that conversation, like that crypto like literally got cut in half or less. So he literally lost like $300,000+, like, in a super short amount of time. And so, you know, again, just like people don't talk about their losses. They only talk about their wins, like how much they made on some, brilliant stock pick or whatever. But there's just so much, information on the tried and true ways of like getting wealthy, in sustainable ways. It's usually fairly slow unless you figure out how to make a lot of money, but just focusing on index investing. And then you can have like fun with like 5 to 10% of your money. And you can go do exciting things like building online businesses. And then you're just putting in, for the most part, small amounts of capital and a lot of sweat equity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, let's transition to your health and fitness journey that you've been going over the last few or several months. So tell us kind of like, you know, where you are, where you were, and where you're going.
Yeah, so I think with life getting kind of complicated and using food as kind of like a comfort, I was like, man, um, I gained 25 pounds, and I'm like, man, I could see it in my face. I could see it when I was doing videos and things of that nature. And I'm like, I don't feel good. My clothes don't fit the way that I want them to. Don't feel comfortable. I'm like, man, I need to do something about this. So there's this company called Healthy Wage where you can bet on your own weight loss. And I was like, I like that. Like anytime when I worked for Ron Blue, we had a weight loss competition and I won it. I was like, I'm really motivated by competitions, right? And so the idea is I bet $60 a month for 6 months, and that's $360. If I hit my goal, I get that plus another. I think I get 392 total. So I get $400 back almost, right? And it costs me nothing if I hit my goal. If I don't hit my goal, they get to keep my $360, which I don't want them to do, right? So I'm very motivated to be like, okay, you're not keeping my money. Like, all right, I'm going to watch what I eat. I'm going to make sure that I'm physically active, that I'm changing my behaviors. And so that's what I've been doing since I think February. So far, I'm down about 8 pounds. So I'm pretty happy with that progress. And it's been kind of a cool journey to be like, hey, I feel empowered to be back on this track.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm curious, what is your fitness why? Like, why are you doing this? Like, what are the deeper reasons? I understand that like you saw it in your face and whatnot, but like, what is the deeper reasons behind, taking this fitness journey?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple. One, it's just having the energy for my kids. I mean, my daughter constantly, she's like, "Hey, Dad, can you throw me in the air? Hey, can you swim me around?" And I'm like, "Oh, my shoulder hurts," or whatever. So I think part of it is like, yeah, being able to be physically active with my kids. Another part is I really do want to help people with their finances, right? I really want to help people get from where they are to where they want to be. And when I don't feel good, I'm not motivated, right? And so I feel like, man, this is a good way for me to get myself in a better fitness position, so that I feel good. So that I'm like, hey, I'm going to record the video today. I'm going to do the podcast. I'm going to do the things necessary so that I can reach those people. And so that really motivates me, because otherwise, it just feels like, my back hurts. I don't have, the energy to do things I want to do. And so those are kind of some of the reasons why I want to get back on track.
Yeah, I think that's huge. One of my beliefs is like, if you want to feel inspired, like work to inspire others, so, and you can do that in your own fitness journey. You can do it in your money journey, your career journey, but really like, if you just work to inspire others with your own progress, like it's this like really cool, like reinforcing virtuous circle where you get even more inspired to like keep inspiring other people with your own progress. So I really commend you for jumping on this journey. The healthy wage thing, betting for yourself, winning this, I think that's super powerful. I think one of the biggest challenges people face in their fitness journey is the accountability. And, because it's so easy to be like, okay, I'll go to the gym tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes next week becomes next month becomes next year. And then 20 years later, you're like, whoa, I'm way out of shape. And it's, just a terrible thing. But if you can find that accountability, whether it's through something like Healthy Wage or getting a fitness coach or a workout buddy or someone who's on the journey with you that holds you accountable, I think that's a really powerful strategy that people can take advantage of. So I appreciate you sharing kind of your own journey there. As we start to wind down this episode, I always like to ask people to share or ask the guest to share one tip, tool, or strategy for fitness, one for money, one for life. They can be three separate ones. They could be one that is applicable to all three, but I'm just curious what you got for us, Deacon.
Yeah. So the thing that I found to be most impactful is there's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, where he talks about like starting with a small habit, right? And so for me, like for fitness, when I go into the office, I'll do a 20-minute walk down this walkway every time. So I go in 4 days a week. That's an extra 80 minutes of movement that I wasn't doing before, right? For your finances, it could be like, hey, when you go out to eat, instead of ordering a soda, it could be ordering water, right? Like, what's one small habit that you can change that will help you get that much closer to your goal? And so whether it's life, money, or fitness, I found that to be a huge help.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, habits literally dictate who we are being and who we become. So if you want to change who you're being, or if you want to change who you're becoming, like you have to transform your habits. And James Clear's book Atomic Habits is incredible. Also, The Power Habit by Charles Duhigg is another really great book about habits. So super awesome. If people want to connect with you online, Deacon, what is the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, best place is wellkeptwallet.com or on Instagram at wellkeptwallet.
Awesome. Any last words of wisdom, requests you want to make of the audience or anything like that?
Yeah, I hope they take away dream, right? Like let that dream guide your decisions moving forward. And because I think that's what we just get so busy in life. Slow down, start dreaming, and I'm excited to see where that takes you.
Awesome. Deacon, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.